Have you ever watched someone desperately try to fix something they believe they broke, only to make everything worse in the process? Picture a person frantically apologizing for breathing too loudly, convinced their very existence burdens others. This is how avoidant guilt became obsession, and it's far more common than most people realize. When someone with avoidant attachment feels guilty about their emotional distance, something fascinating happens in their brain. The guilt doesn't just sit quietly. Instead, it transforms into an all-consuming obsession that drives them to behaviors that would make Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl's manipulation tactics look straightforward. The guilt whispers that they're fundamentally flawed, incapable of love, and destined to hurt everyone they care about. What makes this particularly cruel is how the obsession feeds itself. The more someone tries to fix their perceived brokenness, the more exhausted and distant they become. It's like watching Joe Goldberg from Netflix's You, except instead of obsessing over someone else, they're trapped obsessing over their own inadequacy. The very act of trying to be better becomes proof of how broken they are. Understanding this cycle matters because it affects millions of relationships. When guilt transforms into obsession, it creates a prison where good intentions become torture devices. The person suffering believes they're protecting others by staying away, but they're actually denying everyone the chance at genuine connection. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Consider someone who grew up learning that emotions were inconvenient. Their parents weren't cruel, just busy, distracted, or overwhelmed. Every time this person expressed a need, they sensed the subtle tension, the slight irritation, the way conversations shifted away from feelings. So they learned to be the easy child, the one who never asked for too much. Fast forward to adulthood, and this person enters a relationship with someone warm and emotionally available. At first, everything feels magical. Their partner's openness seems like sunshine after years of emotional winter. But then something shifts. The partner expresses frustration about feeling shut out. They want deeper conversations, more vulnerability, greater intimacy. Suddenly, the guilt arrives like an unwelcome houseguest who refuses to leave. The avoidant person realizes they're doing exactly what they swore they wouldn't do. They're hurting someone they care about. But here's where things get particularly twisted. Instead of guilt motivating healthy change, it becomes an obsession. They lie awake cataloging every way they're deficient, every moment they failed to respond correctly, every sign that they're emotionally broken. The obsession grows stronger when they try to research solutions. They read about attachment theory and recognize themselves in every description of avoidant behavior. This knowledge, meant to be healing, becomes another weapon for self-attack. Now they have official terminology for their brokenness. They're not just emotionally unavailable, they're clinically avoidant. But what happened next reveals something crucial about how guilt and obsession intertwine. The person decided to fix themselves through pure willpower. They forced themselves to share feelings that felt foreign, to engage in conversations that seemed pointless, to perform intimacy they didn't naturally feel. Every forced gesture felt like evidence of their fundamental inadequacy. They were acting loving rather than being loving, and the inauthenticity felt suffocating. The relationship ended, but the obsession intensified. Now they had concrete proof of their inability to love properly. The guilt evolved from "I hurt someone" to "I always hurt everyone" to "I shouldn't even try to connect with people." What started as remorse became a full-time occupation of self-loathing. Here's what needs to happen to break free from this exhausting cycle. First, recognize that guilt and shame are completely different creatures. Guilt says, "I did something wrong," while shame declares, "I am something wrong." Avoidant obsession lives entirely in shame territory, which explains why it feels so consuming and hopeless. When thoughts spiral toward, "I'm fundamentally broken," that's shame talking, not reality. The confirmation bias plays a massive role here. Once someone believes they're incapable of healthy relationships, their brain becomes a detective collecting evidence to support this theory. They notice every time they feel overwhelmed by someone's emotions, but ignore moments when they successfully offered comfort. They remember every relationship that ended, but forget the connections that naturally ran their course. This selective attention makes the obsession feel factual rather than distorted. Start questioning these mental narratives by examining the evidence objectively. Write down specific examples of times when emotional connection felt natural and genuine. These moments exist for everyone, even those with strong avoidant tendencies. The goal isn't to prove that avoidant patterns don't exist, but to recognize that they don't define every interaction or predict every outcome. Challenge the perfectionist thinking that fuels this obsession. Many people with avoidant attachment believe they need to become completely different people to deserve love. This black and white thinking creates impossible standards. Healthy relationships don't require perfect emotional availability. They require genuine effort and gradual growth. Think of it like learning a new language rather than flipping a switch. The most important shift involves changing the relationship with discomfort. Avoidant obsession often stems from viewing emotional overwhelm as personal failure. When someone asks for deeper connection and it feels suffocating, the internal narrative becomes, "I'm broken because I can't handle normal relationship needs." But emotional overwhelm isn't a character flaw. It's information about current capacity and past experiences. Practice responding to emotional overwhelm with curiosity instead of judgment. When someone's emotional needs feel like too much, instead of thinking, "I'm a terrible partner," try, "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, and that's understandable given my background. How can I take care of myself while still showing up for this person?" This subtle shift moves from shame-based obsession toward problem-solving. Understand that healing happens in relationship, not in isolation. The avoidant obsession often convinces people they need to fix themselves completely before attempting connection. This backwards approach actually prevents the very experiences that create growth. Emotional capacity expands through practice, not through theoretical understanding or self-punishment. Consider finding relationships that feel safer for practicing new patterns. This might mean friendships rather than romantic partnerships initially, or connections with people who naturally give space while remaining consistently available. The goal is building evidence that gradual vulnerability can feel manageable and rewarding rather than terrifying and overwhelming. Remember that progress isn't linear, and setbacks aren't evidence of permanent brokenness. Someone like Emily Cooper from Emily in Paris might jump headfirst into emotional situations, but that's not the only path to connection. Slower, more cautious approaches to intimacy can be equally valid when they come from self-awareness rather than self-attack. Breaking free from avoidant obsession requires the courage to challenge years of internal programming. The guilt that whispers about being fundamentally flawed is lying. The obsession that demands perfection before attempting connection is a trap. Real growth happens when someone can hold both truths simultaneously, that they have patterns that sometimes create distance, and that they're capable of meaningful connection. The path forward isn't about becoming someone completely different. It's about bringing compassion to the parts that learn to protect through distance and gradually expanding the capacity for closeness. This work takes time, patience, and often professional support, but it's absolutely possible. The person who learned to survive through emotional distance can also learn to thrive through authentic connection, one small step at a time.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.